And that brings me to my next guest. It's none other than Tim McCallum. Good morning to you, my man.
Good morning, my friend. How are you?
Very, very surreal talking to you and seeing your face. And it's been a 21-year build-up from seeing your face on the news and then seeing you a few years early on the basketball court. And I haven't really... You keep popping up in my life through the Estlers, but it's a brilliant thing to be able to get you on air today. So thanks for joining us, man.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I absolutely loved hearing from you, and I've had a smile on my face since we've connected. And you've brought up a lot of great memories of a wonderful time in my life, and just the whole Geelong connection always just makes me smile. So I'm really looking forward to chatting and discussing all things Geelong and my life, and getting to connect back up with you.
It's beautiful. We've only got half an hour, really. If we can go stretch it out to 40 minutes, let's get straight into it. You touched on something then. Your memory, was it affected by your accident?
No, it wasn't. No. I didn't suffer any brain trauma or injury. I will say, though, that I think that the initial trauma that I had after my diving accident in '99, I was on a lot of medication in those early days, and the body was kind of, was still in shock and was going through, I suppose, that self-preservation mode. And so there are parts of the first 2 weeks that I don't remember. So there's a little bit of amnesia there about those first 2 weeks. And so I watch some video back and see some photos that my mum and dad took, and I'm like, I don't remember that happening. But no long-term effects or anything like that.
So you still remember how much of a jet you were on the court, and you were one of Geelong's fastest sprinters at one stage, weren't you?
I had a bit of speed on me.
Did you what?
I needed it though. I was the shortest person in Geelong as well, I think, at one stage. Hey, look, I loved my sport just as much as I loved my art and my singing and performing, and I was really blessed in Geelong to have been given a lot of opportunities to participate in both activities at a high level. Had some wonderful coaches, and there was Geelong just has such a great community sense, both in the sports and the arts, and they're great environments to grow and thrive. And I don't think it mattered, which club you played for or anything. Like, I played for YMCA, but there are other great clubs, and it doesn't, as I said, even in the theatre world, it belonged to Jasota at one stage and Geelong Lyric at one stage, and it's just so many opportunities. So I have such great fond memories of Geelong being almost like an amazing playground for me to grow up in and just experience all there was to do. And yes, basketball, as soon as I got on that basketball court over the lines, it was game on.
It was. Out of curiosity, do you remember me on the court?
Look, I do. I like all the rivalries that I remember quite well, and especially where the teams kind of sort of came from in Geelong as well.
Yeah.
And so there were these great rivalries. I mean, yourselves with Wildcats, and there was the Warriors and Tri-Boys and Pivot City.
That's right.
There was sort of maybe 5 teams that were always competing each year.
That's right.
And some years were ours, some years were yours. Some would
they're
all
mostly
just
YMCA and Tri-Boys. I reckon you guys were paying off the admin, or something was going on. You just had more cash than everyone else. It's rigged. The whole 90s was rigged.
Good recruiters, I think.
Exactly. Hey, how did you get into singing? It's a bit of an odd one, because I remember back in the 90s, no fellas were singing. I remember Mick Watson went into theatre and it was like, what? What are you doing, you weird old... But you're a basketballer. It's pretty interesting that you took that career. Who got you into that avenue?
Yeah, it's kind of a fun and interesting story. So my sister, I've got a younger sister, Noni, and we were both, I think, about 6 and 4 at the time. And Mum and Dad were looking for opportunities for us to do extracurricular things out of school so that they could have a couple of hours to themselves at the night time. And as a parent now of a 4-year-old, I get that, right? So it was Christmas, so maybe 1986 or something. We would holiday down at Barwon Heads, and we would holiday with a couple of different families and stuff. And we were sitting around the campfire one day, and there was a couple of young girls sitting there singing, and we happened to know the song. My sister and I happened to know the song, so we started singing. And Mum and Dad kind of looked at each other and went, "They've actually got okay voices. Maybe we should get them into singing lessons." So it just so happened, sort of like a week later, it came up in the newspaper that there were kids singing lessons available through Deirdre Slater, who
I had singing lessons from Deirdre Slater. Mate.
See, you haven't grown up in Geelong if you haven't had at least one singing lesson with Deirdre Slater.
Wow.
Deirdre's a real institution in Geelong. She has been the she will have taught so many of Geelong's performers over the years. She's
still around?
She still is around, the lovely Deirdre. Wow. And her daughter Robin.
Wow.
Not too sure where Robin is at the moment, but both of those ladies had a huge impact on my early, and I sang with as her as my teacher, Deirdre, and Robin as my teacher later on. I sang from the age of 6 right through to 18. So it was 12 years of singing lessons every week. And so that's how we kind of started. The first song we actually sang was from that that TV show Greatest American Hero. Look just what happened to me.
Yeah, right.
I can't believe it myself.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, that's right. Well, that was the first song that Noni and I sang. And then, obviously, we were so young, but we went into singing, duets like "There's a Hole in the Bucket, Dear Eliza," and stuff like that. So we did a lot of competitions and Stedfords and things. But we were also both the first grandchildren on both sides.
Right.
So, we had a willing audience. We had grandparents that were just like, entertain us. So I think we were Noni and I were bound to be performers. And both of us, we're now, I'm 41, Noni's nearly 40, and both of us are still singing and performing. So that fire that we were sitting around at Barwon Heads that Christmas sort of paved the way for our future.
Is it painful to talk about the injury, the moment? Do you park it?
No, it's not. It's certainly it's something that I don't reflect on regularly myself unless I'm asked about it. It's not something that I that comes up, in my thoughts or anything. But I do like to talk about it for a couple of reasons. One, because I think it's really important to talk about some water safety, awareness that people might learn from in regards to my injury. And I also think it's helpful for people to understand about spinal cord injuries and what happens to your body when you damage your spinal cord the way I did.
Take us back to that. What happened? You're over in Western Australia doing some studying, and you went for a swim. Is that right?
That's right. So I moved over from Geelong to WA in February '99, and I'd only been in Perth for a couple of days. So I moved over on the Wednesday to start studying on the Monday. And so I did all the typical 18-year-old things on the Thursday and Friday, went to a couple of nightclubs and bought a bike and rode around Perth. And then on the Saturday, I went swimming with a couple of mates that I was going to the university with. And we'd only been there for about 5 or 10 minutes. I'd ran into the water a couple of times, just sort of diving, over the waves as they were coming in. Couldn't believe how warm the water was in Perth compared to water in Victoria. So I ran back out this third time and told my mate who was on the beach waxing his surfboard. I said, "Come on, hurry up and get in. This water's beautiful." And I ran into the water this fourth time, but I ran about 10 meters to the right of where I'd previously run in. And unbeknownst to me, as I was running in and there was an incoming wave, unbeknownst to me, there was a sandbar on the other side, which I didn't see. And it was only about 2 inches of water. So the wave kind of flipped me up and I dived headfirst into that sandbar. I remember the thud of my head on the sandbar. I remember hearing quite a loud crack because obviously under the water, everything's kind of amplified. I remember feeling a almost like an electric shock from my head to my toes. And I knew straight away that it was pretty serious. I mean, I'd had some falls, previously in my life. I'd had some decent falls on the basketball court and stuff, and you just know when the wind is taken out of you. But this was different. This was something very serious. And I remember lying there in the water face down, hoping that someone saw me go in.
Yeah.
And then I saw these hands come, and they were, sort of floating in front of my face. And I remember that they were actually, I thought, yes, someone's come to get me. And then I realized that they were actually my hands. And
wow.
And I actually couldn't move them. And that was when I knew it was as serious as what I thought. So I blacked out at that stage. And luckily, the three mates that I was with saw me go in but not come up. And they found me about 2 minutes later down the beach, about 100 meters down the beach. And they brought me in on a surfboard. They knew that I had done some damage. So they brought me in on a surfboard. They did the best job they possibly could have done to stabilize someone with a spinal cord injury, to not move the neck, and to keep me as still as possible. So, yeah, so and it sounds fairly traumatic, and it is on one hand, but on the other hand, it was actually the guys that I was with made it really calm, and there was no panic, and they just did their job. They held my hand. The people around me on the beach were holding towels up. They were actually a youth church group that were praying down the beach a bit, came and stood around me and held towels up to make sure the sand didn't blow up around me and stuff. So, and the medics were unbelievable, who I still keep in touch with to this day. I was taken to Royal Perth and Shenton Park Spinal Injuries Unit. And just to explain, like with a spinal cord injury, you have so much swelling at your point of injury. So I broke my neck around C4 level, so just above the shoulders. I broke my C4 vertebrae and damaged my C4, C5 spinal cord, and overstretched it. And but it was about 6 weeks for the swelling to go down before I finally got a diagnosis that I would be a quadriplegic, to sit in a wheelchair and never walk again. And so it's a long 6 weeks. You kind of it's coming, because you're not seeing the major improvements that you're hoping you would see.
Yeah.
I got some shoulder and arm movement back, but no movement below my chest, no hand or finger function. And so when the doctor told me, that I would never walk again, I wasn't surprised, but it was still the hardest news that I've ever had to hear. So I was 18, and you knew me at the time. I was fairly fit, active, motivated kind of guy who knew where I wanted to go, knew what I wanted to do, and knew where, who I wanted to be, to all of a sudden finding myself in a hospital bed, paralyzed and unable to move, and not sure about whether or not I'd be able to reach my dreams anymore.
What's something, Tim, thanks for sharing, mate. It's really, I don't think we get too often a close-up and an open platform like this to be able to talk so openly, so I really appreciate the listeners would be probably just sitting there just amazed and a bit taken back. It's the beauty about this show. What's something that you remember the most about what is it? You got a dark time that you went through after that moment, or you're relatively positive all the way through till now? Is there parts of the system that is quite isolating and lonely that could be improved? Tell us a little bit about your first kind of first
sure.
year to...
Well, look, rehabilitation was 9 months in hospital, so it's a long time to be away from a comforts of your home and a long time to be in a hospital situation and not out in the community and not experiencing the things that you were used to. I actually think that when I look back and I think about the time, and yes, there were some dark times because I was lying in a hospital bed where I couldn't move, and often I found myself, staring at the roof for hours until a nurse would come in, and check your obs and or need medication, or if visitors weren't coming. The hardest thing for me was often when visitors would say they would come, and you would really look forward to seeing someone, and then something might pop up, or they might forget or something, and they wouldn't come, and you'd be lying there, and you can't make a phone call because you can't move. You couldn't use my hands or fingers, and so often those times were actually, because I was quite a social person, and so I think the hardest times were the times where I was by myself and left with my own thoughts, and so that's tough, because then you start to go into thinking, what's life going to be like? The things that I used to do only 5 minutes before my injury, I'm no longer going to be able to do. And one of the hardest moments I remember was actually there was a basketball court outside my hospital window, an outdoor basketball court, and I loved my basketball, and sure, it might not have been my my career choice, but it was something that I got a lot out of emotionally and physically. And I used to look at those basketball ring out there and just wonder, I'm never going to be able to shoot another basketball. I'm never going to be able to bounce that ball down the court. But then I would see guys out on the court wheeling their wheelchairs around and playing wheelchair basketball. And, it wasn't long before I sort of realized that, I might not be able to do the things that I used to do. I'm just going to have to do them differently now. So I just found a way of pulling myself out of those moments of thinking that I'll never be able to do things, to changing the mindset and the picture in my head to, I might not be able to do it that way, but I'm going to do it this way. So it was just a new picture, a new direction, a new challenge. So I didn't dwell too much on the can'ts and the won'ts, and tried to think more about the hows and the wills.
How long did you stay in Perth for? Do they fly you back to Victoria? It's a question from some listeners.
Yeah, they did. So I had halo traction. So that's the 4 screws in the head with the round little ring, and the 24 kilos of weights to pull the neck straight and stuff. And so I actually flew back on a commercial aeroplane back from Perth to Melbourne with this halo traction on, which was an amazing thing to do. But yeah, so I was in Perth for 13 weeks, and then completed my rehab at Royal Talbot in Kew in Melbourne, where I was a bit closer to family and friends and things. So that made it a lot easier. And when it came time for me to be able to come home and do weekend visits, they were the times that you look forward to, sort of getting back on with life and seeing those familiar faces, and seeing that there could be life after, hospital.
You have you done much basketball advancement? Like, did you? I know I'm going to talk about 2 things. One is your journey in rehabilitating to get back on singing. Mm-hmm. Did you also have the same approach to basketball? Did you want to get back on the court in a wheelchair with all these things, or was it kind of one or the other, or did you just want to be the Tim McCallum that we know and just take everything on and have a crack?
Well, I still love my sport, and I don't play it as much as what I used to. I did try wheelchair basketball out at Tri Boys. They had a great wheelchair basketball sort of program out there, and I tried it, but I didn't have I was a good defender, Troy. I got in everyone's way, but I couldn't throw a ball. I didn't have the muscles and the ability to be able to throw a ball. Yeah. And so basketball was probably never going to be an option for me. and I wasn't too interested in quad rugby, wheelchair rugby either. So I actually got into coaching. I was approached by YMCA to coach an under-12 basketball team that was needing a coach. And I think it was their way of kind of going, let's bring Tim back into the fold and get him around the basketball.
That's beautiful.
I truly believe that, Keith Roderick and Ken Price and a couple of the other guys really thought about, let's keep Tim in and around us and love him and give him an opportunity. And I ended up coaching under 12s, 14s, 16s, right up through to under 18s, a few years later, and then Division 1 men. And I was actually coaching guys that I used to play against. And you know what? I got the same emotion and even the same physical exuberance and endorphins of playing the game when coaching the game. And so that was a great lesson for me to learn as well. Once again, I was never going to be able to play it the way I used to, but I could coach it the way I used to play. So hopefully some of my experience as a player rubbed off on some of the players that I coached. So.
What does your injury do to singing and singers?
Yeah.
And just quickly, where's your body at now? What can you feel? You seem like you're moving around, but there is some kind of differences. How would you explain what's going on in your limbs and your?
Yeah, sure. Look, I'm quite a fidgety person. I'm what I make up for lack of movement below my chest, I make up for it above. So my wife's constantly telling me at the movies, stop moving. I still have no movement below my chest down. I have sensation all over my body, so I can feel if you're tickling my little toe. But it's altered, so it's kind of like a different and more of a numb feeling. And
Sure.
And I also have some nerve pain, neurological pain in some of my limbs on different days and things. So the spinal cord's quite complicated. I can't feel temperature below my chest. So,
Wow.
in the showers in the morning, I can feel the hot water on my shoulders and neck, but I can't feel the hot water below, my chest. So I've got to make sure that, things like carrying a coffee around in my lap or
Sure.
Sitting too close to an open fire or something, from personal experience, you need to make sure that, I'm watching those things. So,
Yeah, sure.
So still no hand or finger function. And so how that affects my singing is that, yes, I've lost the ability to actually mentally use my, I suppose, like intercostal muscles and a lot of my back muscles and lower abdominal muscles to be able to breathe and sustain notes and hold the breath in and things. So as a high level quadriplegic, those who are aware of that kind of injury would know that usually quadriplegics have shortness of breath. Their range of tone and song is quite shallow, and you speak with quite a low, quiet voice. But I've been able to adapt a new singing technique, which I discovered in rehab, where I use my arms to leverage on my wheelchair to be able to push down on my diaphragm, and I control the air out so that I can hit those high notes and hold those long notes. And it's something different. No one else is doing that around the world that I've come across yet. A lot of the clinicians and respiratory specialists and things are amazed at what I can do.
Wow.
But for me, once again, it was a case of I might not be able to sing the way I used to, but I'm going to do it a different way, a new way. And I created this new technique, and now I'm singing better than I ever did beforehand.
Wow. So impressive. I've got some people on the chat. I want to try and get through them as well. Matty Barclay, I don't know if you remember Matt Barclay. He's an old YMCA player. Yeah, good. You're nodding your head. He remembers playing basketball with and against him. So shocked when this happened to you. Great to see your determination and drive although maybe adjusted with the injury, have stayed so strong. So a true story of human spirit and positivity. He also adds on, who are your singing heroes and inspirations? And why do you think Meatloaf was so bad at the 2011 AFL Grand Final?
Oh, Matty. God love him. What a player he was too. I love playing with him.
Yeah.
Oh, look, and that's very lovely comments too, Matty. My musical heroes. So I got two at the top of my list, and I can't separate them both because they're both very different, but they've both shaped the performer that I am today. I grew up listening to John Farnham and Farnsey, and I've been to every John Farnham concert live. I just think he's one of the greatest live performers.
He is.
So, as someone who just, when you go to his concert, you just feel like he's entertaining you, like you're in his lounge room, and you know he's just the bloke next door. He's always just come across as so humble, and he's just a larrikin and fun, but he's got one of these killer voices. He can back it up with his talent too. So he's got songs that have lasted generations. So he's a great Australian icon. And for me, the other one is Anthony Warlow, who I suppose shaped my musical theatre passion and love, and probably has one of the most purest voices I've ever heard. And he's a great storyteller. And that's what I love about art, is that art is about telling stories and sharing those stories. And he's probably one of the greatest exponents of it doesn't matter how good you sing, it's about how you connect with your audience. And it just so happens that he's got one of the greatest tenor voice, baritone tenor voices going around. So
I saw him the first time 3 years ago, and it was a long time coming. Massive fan, and just finally someone bought me a ticket. I went and saw him at a day in the green at Werribee Mansion, and cried for probably 90% of it, and pumped my arms around. And it felt like, you're spot on, it felt like the sound was going only to me and no one else could hear properly. It was just for me. It was unbelievable. I'll never forget that concert, let alone going as many times as you have. I've got another question here. It's around wheelchair disability access. What changes have you seen over the last few years in particular? And where can it improve further?
Yeah, sure. Look, that's a great question. I'm 21 years post-injury, and certainly things have changed quite a lot in that time. But even back when I had my injury 20 years ago, there were still access issues, and I remember so many times as a performer, I would rock up to a venue to perform, and there'd be 10 steps to the stage, and a lot of theatres aren't accessible. I mean, the Geelong Performing Arts Centre themselves didn't have access to the stage, for quite a long time, until I was lucky enough to be involved in some of the changes that they made there, adding a stair lift from the green room to the stage, and things like being an access consulting was a lot of great fun. But there have certainly been some great advances. 1 in 5 people in Australia have a disability, and I think in the last 10 to 15 years, we're now starting to pay attention to the fact that we need to make this world a more inclusive environment for everyone. And I don't think that's just disability. I think that's parents with prams, and our senior citizens and things. So we're starting to see a lot more consideration around that. I think back when I had my accident 20 years ago, a lot of it was around like the Paralympics, Paralympians and sports heroes. There weren't too many other people with disabilities in other fields excelling at their field. Now we've got members of parliament that have disabilities. Now we're seeing more people with disabilities on our commercial TVs and things. So the opportunities are coming, but we could be doing a lot better, and we could be putting disability and I suppose minorities more at the forefront. and not making them minorities, making them, understanding that, we're all different. We're a diverse community, and we all need to have a voice and be included. So there's some wonderful advocates out there. I've tried to do my best over the years because I love a microphone and love a platform, Troy. So the NDIS has been a wonderful program for people with disabilities, and there's still a lot of work to be done in that area to improve that program. But I have been a great beneficiary of the NDIS and how it's improved my life, my ability to be able to independently look after my health and my well-being, and allow access to the equipment that I need to achieve everyday tasks, from medical equipment to assistance with care, travel, transport, all of those kind of things. So, I would love to be an NDIS advocate, and I shout it to the rooftops that they can really improve the lives of people with a disability. But you first have to know what your needs are, and what it is that you want to do in life, and then what you need to be able to achieve that. And then you need to learn how to articulately ask for that help. And that's often hard to do because sometimes we don't know what we actually need.
Sure.
So that's probably a conversation for another day. But I've had to learn that over the years, Troy, about disability and life in general. I think we can't do all of this on our own, and we need help, and we need the support of others around us. And so it's learning about how to ask for that help, and it's learning how to find out what are the right questions to ask.
I watched a documentary just recently. It's one of the most powerful documentaries I've watched. It was about Richard Turner, a magician. He's not a magician. He fixes card games because he lost his eyesight at a young age, and all his senses went to his fingers. He is so annoyed and despises when people point out that he's a blind entertainer.
Yeah.
He's got a sister that weirdly, a year after him, this is when he was 8 or 9, she also lost her sight. She's more so in the, hey, I'm blind, I need some help. He's like, get away, I don't want to ever be introduced as a blind person. Two very different stories, and both their own. They can do whatever they like to do it. His is to really make sure that he's not seen as that, and to probably tell himself, and he doesn't want to be reminded about any kind of disabilities. Is this the same? Where do you sit in those kind of characters, I guess, ways of looking at it? Do you like to not be introduced as Tim the person in the wheelchair? Just Tim the singer would be all right, thank you.
Yeah. I'm very much in the camp of I'm Tim McCallum first, and I'm a husband next, and then a father, and then I'm a Saints football fan, and an entertainer, and disability somewhere down the line there. I don't know where it fits, but it's definitely not. He's Tim McCallum, the quadriplegic singer. I mean, that's it doesn't define who I am. But also, don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to hide from it. I don't think it's something that we should. I don't go out of my way to make sure that I remove it from anyone's vocabulary, because it is still a part of who I am. So it's about finding the right balance, and where it fits comfortably in my day-to-day existence. So, and I think if everyone is at different levels at different times, dealing with their own disability, and sometimes I'll come across someone who is just so lives their disability, just wants disability to be all their life, and that's okay. That's their choice. I respect that. So, but for me, I try and find that balance. Sometimes I go days without mentioning the word disability, because it's just not relevant in those days. And other days, disability is everything that I do. So I think I've got a nice balance.
I've got moments where I've been around people that either have there's something unique about them. Don't call it unnormal, but if I saw someone in a wheelchair, or if I saw some kind of disability that challenged the way I approach them, I don't always. I always fear that they've already noticed that I notice them, and I'm avoiding it. Are you super sensitive of like, or do you just don't? Do you also try and? How do you deal with it when someone's uncomfortably trying to avoid it? Do you just let it?
Well,
Do you just let it all unfold and go? That's all good. You'll
yeah,
get there. You'll
I
get there.
do. At the end of the day, it's not my issue. So, you know, if I can help that person become more comfortable, you know, the shaking hand thing is a perfect example.
Oh, what do
So
you
you'll
do?
see, you know, well, for those people, you know, that might be listening who can't see my hand, it's the fingers are curled over a little bit, and I can't straighten my fingers out. I can't give a good handshake like I used to.
Yeah.
Right? So when you shake my hand, you're basically shaking a fist almost, right? And that just sounds uncomfortable, right? You know. Now, but it's only uncomfortable for you, not me, because these are my hands
Yeah.
and I'm used to them, right? This is
Yeah.
the best that I can do. I don't mind going in for the handshake as long as you're okay with receiving a fist, you know.
I
And
think
so,
it's called a wet fish, Tim, in most handshake circles. A wet
well,
fish handshake.
I'm the king of it. But that's a perfect moment where I can tell if someone's a bit awkward about grabbing my hand, which is a fist to shake. I can then say to them, look, unfortunately, I can't straighten my fingers out to give you a good handshake. This is the best way I can do it. If you don't feel comfortable, just give me a fist pump.
Yeah.
It's good that they're in fashion now. Hey, you know,
It's coming around. It's all coming around.
especially in COVID times.
There's some great comments going here. Just lots of encouraging comments on the chat line here, which obviously you can't see. My mum asked a question, and I hope it's okay to ask. Have you ever asked God, why me?
Yeah, many times, especially early on after my injury, and then other times in my life where other you know, challenges and things I faced. You know, my wife and I, we've been blessed with a 4-year-old boy, but that wasn't without its challenges with a couple of miscarriages and things. And you know, we all go through life where we will face some adversity or challenge at some stage. And I, as a person of faith, have very much been in those times where I've sort of dropped down to the knees and just looked up and just gone, why me? Why now? But it's only through a strong faith and a strong belief that these things happen for a reason, and that it's God's plan, and that we might not get the answer at the time. You know, we're not always going to hear that voice to actually say, hey, look, I've done this for a reason. But I find the answers in everyday little things. And you know, here talking to you today, you know, this is another example of how we've been brought together is you know, a conversation about my disability and an opportunity to show that people can rise through challenges like this, and to talk about the importance of support and family and you know, those that care and things. So I find the answers in everyday things, and that's what's been able to keep me going. But I also believe that you know, there's this life to be had here, which will always be a challenge, but there's a good life to be had on the other side too. So I strive towards that.
You represent the human race so well, Timmy. It's I just can't help but think humans are such good people to the core. You know, we might do some silly things and we might hurt each other, but at the core, we are good people. You've been National Ambassador of Spinal Cord Injury Awareness Week. You're the National Disability Awards guest. You've been at an International Day for People with a Disability Ambassador. I just want you to add in now a guest of RGR Radio and just put a YouTube link in there and just send that out to your profile. Thanks, that'd be really great.
Done. It's going on the bio first thing we get off.
I really appreciate you spending your time today, Tim. I was really looking forward to it and you didn't let me down. It's been beautiful.
It's my pleasure. I've really enjoyed it too, mate. It's been lovely to go down memory lane a bit, and I I hope your listeners have enjoyed hearing my story and enjoy hearing my music. I'll be back down in Geelong, quite a lot. And make sure that you check out my website, timmccallum.com.au. The gratuitous plug there,
No,
Troy.
that's
But
good. Hey, have you got any gigs coming up?
do you know what? It's a hard time for gigs at the moment. I've got a few here in Brizzy but definitely my interstate ones have sort of been put on hold. It's a bit hard to balance that out with COVID at the moment. But definitely in the new year, I'm back down in Geelong with a couple of things. So I'll make sure that I let you and your listeners know when I've got some things that they might be able to come along to. But it was actually a real joy to and it was with sadness too, but it was a great honour to come down just recently to be able to sing at Frank Costa's wedding. Frank Costa's funeral. And it was nice to come home and see everyone and celebrate the man that had made a huge impact in Geelong. So I love coming back home. Geelong will always still be home until I've lived away longer. It will always remain home, and the people of Geelong are very dear to my heart, and people like yourself are just so great to reminisce about some great times. And it's nice to come home and be welcomed when I am.
Looking forward to it, mate. I can't wait for you to... I have never seen you sing live other than at a Carols by Candlelight, I reckon, way back when I think... Is Dennis Walters...
Johnson's Park. Carols, Johnson's Park.
I've now inherited an 8-year-old son from my now wife, and we walk past. We go to church at the Reformed Presbyterian just over the road. And I kept telling him, down here's where it all happens at Christmas carols. It's got to be Dennis, Walter and Rocky You.
Love it. Well, if I get the chance to come back and do that, I'll make sure I let you know, and it'd be good to have you to gig.
Hey, I'm going to actually play. You did something in isolation, so I'm going to play that on the way out. You got a few people together. I know Julie Walter really well, and I'm going to play your Seasons of Love in isolation, if you don't mind. It's something that you did with some friends, and we'll see you on the other side, my man. Power on. See you, mate.
See you, brother. Bye.